Hello, this is Keith Gittins Jones.
Hi, Keith.
Hi, this is Fam Electric Ghost, and this is the Fam Electric Ghost Show, and we have Rhubarb and Custard on the line. And you're an online photography service and lesson business. At least that's how you configured now, right?
That is correct. Yes, yeah. We currently do studio photography as well as a lot of general photography in all sorts of avenues, events, and so on, and have been running sort of lessons and courses for a while as well.
You've been around since 2008, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, right at the beginning of the last turn down.
Yeah.
So we managed to get through that, and now we're seeing ourselves trying to get through a second one.
So you're in Eton, England?
That's correct. Yes, Eton in Berkshire, and just next door to the famous Eton College.
Yes, yeah. I was listening to the voice memo you gave me. We could actually include that as a segment in the podcast if you want, if I edit it a little bit, or we could just not do that. But
if you think it's good enough, I don't mind at all. And if you think that it sort of fits in there, and if you want me to go back and re-record or speak about anything separately, differently, more than happy to. Unfortunately, as I just before this, I decided, right, I better just clean out the cobwebs of the computer, give it a good old reboot, and it's taking 49 minutes to restart.
That's fine. I actually kind of created a picture based on your website of your page where you're talking about your online courses. I took like a screenshot and then I cropped it a little bit so I can use that for a photo.
Oh, that's fantastic. Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's got some highlights like on your online page, which you're pushing for these online courses. It talks about that you have online private photography lessons delivered face-to-face on your desktop. So you're doing some kind of conference call type thing?
That's exactly it. I think at the moment we are really having to go on the conference calling thing where it's face-to-face, it's one-to-one, direct interaction with the tutor.
So that's what the difference is with what you're doing. It's not like some canned, pre-recorded course. You're actually having a live, face-to-face instructor. Is that the case?
That's exactly it. So, in other words, we instead of having to be so, it's that sort of motivation aspect. You got to be very motivated to go on to the next course, the next lesson, and so on. And motivation, it does start to dwindle very easily when you're in. When morale isn't high, when you can't get out to exercise as much, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So having a fixed sort of meeting with someone and direct interaction, I think, is really, really good for the soul, for the learning process, and for the morale.
Yeah, I think the engagement, because if you look at a lot of the new cycling at home models, they have live, like, physical instructors.
Yeah, exactly. The Peloton model, yeah.
Yeah, the Peloton model, because I think it gets people to, like, if you just had a canned video, people are like, well, that's not real. So they're probably less motivated to do it. When you have a live instructor, you're more motivated because you feel like you're actually interacting. I think that's probably better.
Completely, yeah.
Better engagement overall. So you have a one-to-one coach. You said you had like 5 or 6 people who are doing this for you?
That's right. We've got 6 coaches, all of which are professional photographers in their own right. Many of which have spent most parts of their career teaching photography as well. And all with different specialities in photography. So one who's a landscape photographer, another who's an artistic photographer, another one who is food photography, conflict and reportage photography, and so on. So there's a huge wealth of knowledge there. And what we will be doing is at a later stage having, for those people who are already accomplished in photography, we'll be having a series of seminars on those different types of specialism and the sort of challenges that one faces, for example, in reportage photography, conflict photography, photographing wars, but also in how to set up the studio for food photography, that sort of thing.
Okay, so you're branching out to all. Do you work with because I tend to interview a lot of musicians, that, work on like album covers or promotional stuff for their projects. Do you work with musicians to do stuff like that, or are you not in that genre?
No, we certainly can do. I'll be completely honest. I haven't ever before. Let me just think. Have I ever done anything like that before? No, not that I can think of. But I mean, it's certainly you would put together something. I'd love to work with musicians. I think that would be a really cool angle to do.
Yeah, because a lot of musicians right now, they're like stuck in their home studios. They're stuck at home. They're trying to come up with ways to engage. And what I primarily do is I interview musicians and actors a lot of times.
Yes, I understand.
And so, since they're all home and they can't tour, you might be able to, like, I've interviewed like 30 musicians in the last 2 years. And so once I put this out there, they might be, become aware of you, and they might be looking for professionals that could give them, a potential base of customers.
Yeah,
so some of the people
absolutely.
I've talked to. Yeah, so once it gets out there, then they'll probably be aware of it, and then when I promote it, so it's just something. If you're interested to maybe thinking about it, then you could probably provide services to them as well. But
absolutely, yeah, 100%. The other angle on that would be the similarity between music and the inspiration it has on the soul, and how meditative it is, and how creative it can be. So it has huge similar benefits that music does have, which I think a lot of your listeners will relate to. So I think that there's that. The other actual option on that, or the other third angle on that, is again with the training in photography. A lot of people now with digital photography are sort of relying on themselves for their photography, and for maybe not so much album covers, but their sort of podcast promotional stuff, and their sort of second tier photography, as it were. And one of the things that we could certainly do is teach people how to take better photographs themselves, within their own business and within their own requirements, so that they are less reliant on dishing out either less reliant on paying for professionals, or getting better photographs for those second tier requirements. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, because a lot of people, for me, example, if I have a home studio, I do Facebook Live, and I do Twitch live broadcast from my home studio, and I kind of over the years, I've kind of just done it myself,
right,
without having any kind of artistic, teaching. I just kind of figured things out and did stuff that way. But I'm sure, I could benefit from what you're doing.
Yeah.
To try to increase the quality of what I'm doing. I think all the other artists I'm dealing with, they're doing the same things. They're doing live studio performances, maybe trying to figure out what are better ways to do that, what better camera angles, what better equipment, better lighting, better tools. From a professional, that would probably help a lot. So they'd be looking for people to maybe help them with that, and that's what a lot of guys are doing now. A lot of bands are switching to recording directly from their home studio.
Absolutely. Listen, Keith, if you if this is successful, and this goes out nicely, and there's no reason why not, then you'd be more than welcome to join us on on one of the sessions. It'd be a pleasure.
Well, that'd be cool. Cause I'd be definitely interested, because I'm constantly trying to figure out ways to, project the Fam Electric Ghost concept out there to the world.
Fantastic.
So so you have a cutting edge one-click video conferencing software. So people should know they don't have to download this. You can immediately launch it, and you don't have to worry about having a download. That's what you're using?
Well, to be totally honest, that has changed over the last 48 hours, simply because that system that we were using, the video quality was starting to, I was getting a bit nervous with that. And I've actually gone over to Zoom to do that. I think I'll be using Zoom now, because the quality was much more. But the great thing is Zoom, on the other side, a lot of people already have it because of the situation that we're all in, and it is the market leader at the moment for that. So it's got its own advantages, where the likelihood is you're not going to need to download it, or if you do download it, you'll be using it again later in the future. So but it is cool. Free to download.
Okay, well, that's good. I had that bullet point. So I'll adjust that. So the other thing is, everybody can do this on a smartphone. They don't have to do it on a laptop. They could actually talk to you on your smartphone, or is that still the case?
Yeah, I think Zoom has its own app for the smartphone, for iPad, or desktop. So yeah, they don't need any special stuff.
That's cool. And the sessions are up to, or they are an hour long?
At the moment, usually our lessons are 2 hours long when they're face to face in our studio.
Okay.
However, I think that we're just going to play it by ear at first, because the first few that we've had were really sort of, I wanted to make sure that people's attention span is as a maximum.
Yeah.
If it turns out that certainly people can book for 2 hours at a time, if they wanted to, and we'd be happy to do that. But I think I'm just trying it at 1 hour at a time for the time being.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, most of my interviews go from a half hour to an hour. People usually kind of drop off after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. An hour, we're kind of pushing it. Some podcasts don't go as long as we do, but we found, like, when people want to tell their story, you kind of let them tell their story. And, 30 people I've interviewed, they've gone up to like 60 minutes.
Right. Okay, great.
So that's worked for us. So we can understand that. It makes sense.
Cool.
So your whole history back in 2008, when you started the business, like, what was your primary motivation to, like, get into this as your own business? Because you said you had worked, like, in Connecticut, you worked in the States, you worked for some big brands, and what made you want to go off on your own rather work with some of those other opportunities you had?
Yeah, so I had a global role where I was marketing manager for whiskies and two of big brands. I spent a lot of time in the Czech Republic, in Paris for 6 years, and then I moved to the States. And during that time, I learned a huge amount in terms of marketing and in terms of how to develop a brand and so on. But at the same time, I was very, very aware that I was only contributing myself to a small part to myself, and a larger part of the contribution was, to the ultimate shareholders who I didn't know and so on. And I thought, actually, I want to even if I make a smaller contribution to myself, at least I'll be building my future, as opposed to having this job which could end at any moment. So with the sort of interest of investing at mine, plus being really inspired by a lot of American photographers who had their own studios, their own galleries that promoted their own work, I thought what a fantastic concept it would be to go back home, take a whole load of photographs. And I traveled around America for 4 months, just me in my car and taking photos all over the States, and absolutely loved it. It was what my own personal sort of discovery journey, my walkabout and so on. And seeing all of these photographers' galleries, it made me think, actually, I can use these photographs to set my own business up in the UK, and have a gallery, and that would be the ultimate sort of job for me. As it turned out, how when you set something up, you never know how it's going to evolve and change. Eventually, it did change, evolved into not only having that, but also the studio side and the portraiture side, with that Eton College side of things as well. And then also with the lessons and courses, just to bring different revenue streams in. But the lessons and courses was such a pleasure to do, and such a satisfying thing, that it's just sort of snowballed, turning into a very successful part of the business at the moment.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was looking at your website. So your photo studio or your gallery. So is your gallery primarily a showcase for your own work, or do you lend it out to other artists or other photographers?
We do lend it out to other artists. We went through a phase of having about one photographer every month. We're probably on one every few months now. But we love to be able to promote other people's work, get people in, and host other photographers' work as well. Definitely, yeah.
And with the current situation, are you thinking of doing an online gallery to kind of be able to continue that, given what's going on now?
At the moment, we're focusing on the lessons and courses. I want to get that really under my belt so that we give the best possible experience to people. But if this goes on for as long as people are saying it may go on and so on, then yeah, definitely there'll be a chance for that.
Yeah. So your other services is that you do photo shoots, you do family photography, wedding, pet portraits, corporate headshots, you passports. So you had a full photography services business.
It is, exactly. It's from A to Z. It goes. We really do every part of photography that you can, and it's I suppose with the experience we've had over the last sort of 12 years, we're able to adapt ourselves to each kind of thing quite well.
That's interesting. Yeah. So some of those parts of the business, you're not focusing on them right now because it's harder to do because they're face to face and all face to face contact. Our governor, I'm in New Hampshire, and our governor just put the, no travel order. We're all kind of locked down now.
Yeah. Like we are here. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going state to state in the States instead of being like the whole country. Like certain states or governors are making their own decisions. But, yeah, so it's like as a musician, like I've been a studio guy, so I do studio production work. I've got some arrangements with some publishers and stuff. So I always do collaborations, and a lot of the things that's interesting is I've done like non-face-to-face collaborations for the last 3 years.
Oh wow! Right.
As a musician, and people are saying, "Well, how can you do that?" And now they're like, "What?" Now people are asking me, "Well, how do you do it?"
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's suddenly everyone is starting to being forced to work in a totally different way, and I think some people are going to thrive at it. Some people are going to find it very, very difficult. But hopefully, it'll give a new string to a lot of people's bows.
Yeah, because as musicians, a lot of times like we kind of are based on like the feel. So a lot of times, if you do a collaboration with the musician, a lot of times you want to do a face to face because you kind of read each other as musicians. If you're a guitar player, or drummer, or piano player, you're kind of reading the vocalist. You're kind of watching what they do and
body
listening.
Language. Yeah,
the body language has a lot of cues. And if you've been a musician for 20 years, you kind of know how to pick up the cues. And the problem is you kind of go a little blind if all you get is an audio.
Yes.
And then you got like, well, I got to figure this out. But then you have to adjust your senses, and you have to adjust how you deal with stuff. And it's possible to do it. I've done it, and so I that's the way the world is going. Everybody's trying to transform their business to online and find ways to keep on going.
Yeah, and I think that a good point on that is also that we have the growing aspect of video interviews now. I think FaceTime before was a sort of a bit of a gimmick. It was a nice to have, but actually not terribly functional. And I think people are now just beginning to understand how powerful it is in terms of actually being able to get not necessarily all of that body language and all of those cues as you were talking about, but at least a part of it. Where, for example, when we're delivering our lessons and courses online, you are able to judge whether or not someone is getting bored, and therefore to speed things up or to ask them whether they're understanding things. And so you get that to and fro of non-verbal communication, which I think is something that we, was lacking in, you could never do it just over the phone or anything like that, but it's as close to a real workshop environment or a real face-to-face environment as you can get.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, one of the problems we've had in trying to do video collabs with other musicians is the kind of like lag of the net. There's like a little bit of a lag, and so if you're playing as a band, it doesn't give you a good experience.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Some drummers in their studio and the piano plays another, and there's a little bit of a lag, and it kind of doesn't work. And we've been looking to see if people
the timing
come up with
in music is so crucial, isn't it? You have to be right on time, otherwise the whole thing it's a bit like a photograph. It's I keep going back and switching between the two comparisons because it's like if you take a photograph of the horizon and it is just like a 1 degree not straight, 1 degree out, then you can't tell what's wrong with it from the naked eye. If you're just looking at it, you sort of look at it and say, yeah, that's all right. It's an interesting image. But then if you actually get the horizon absolutely straight, suddenly it turns that image, just such a small changes that image into a, wow, that's a beautiful photo. And it's the same with music. I think if you're just out on the timing, then it's sort of, yeah, okay. Whereas if you're spot on, then really that's what makes something pop out and come alive.
Yeah, so I've kind of switched to an idea of actually doing showcases. We're going to be doing like Facebook Lives.
Oh, great.
To have like some of the artists we've interviewed actually do a performance for 20 minutes or a half hour from the home studio, kind of in an unplugged fashion. So we're working on that. We'll be doing that. And then we're also working on doing video interviews. But like this podcast is all audio.
Yes.
So we have to use another tool for that. And so we've been working on that. It's just like we were in the middle of getting ready to do something like that with some artists we did last year. We talked to, but then this whole crisis happened, so it kind of put everybody like is kind of scrambling to do like survival techniques.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. Go back to basics.
Yeah, so we kind of put it on hold until people kind of stabilize and figure out what they're doing. But yeah, we're working toward that. So we find it really interesting with what you're doing. With the online courses. My daughter actually does online school
right.
for college. So I mean, a lot of kids in the U.S. had to get forced into that. So that's what's being done now.
It's also a really interesting thing I thought the other day in terms of how our younger generation are going to so overtake us in inverted commas oldies now, because they will adapt to that so much faster than we are going to, and there we are trying to keep things going while they're just sort of ready to overtake us completely.
Yeah, my daughter did an online high school. I mean, because she had like a medical condition, so she had to do online high school.
Right.
Everybody was all real critical. I said, well, how can you do that? And it really prepared her for what the world is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good for her. That's great.
Yeah, she's a graphic artist. She's a sequential graphic artist. She does
fantastic.
Like a lot.
How old is she then now?
She's 20. She's been working on a lot of cool things. She's had a logo bought by a Canadian farm. She did layouts with a comic book company, character design. She has her own characters that she actually is working on a graphic novel. So she's pretty cool.
Oh, fantastic. That sounds great.
She's like cutie hipster on Instagram. You can see her stuff. But
what was that? Chewy hipster?
Cutie hipster. Yeah,
we were in Tokyo.
Great. Yeah, we were in Tokyo for 2 years, from 2004 to 2006. So she has like a Shinto motif to all of her work, like an anime and manga kind of interesting thing. It's because we're African Americans, but she has a Shintoism in her work.
Brilliant.
So yeah, like 9-tailed, 7-tailed foxes and all kinds of spirit animals in her work, which are pretty cool.
Great.
Yeah, so we're into my wife was a playwright from Mount Holyoke College. She did plays, and I'm a musician, so we're all kind of a very artistic.
It's a really artistic family, yeah.
Yeah, we kind of lean toward that. So we appreciate, totally appreciate what you're doing, and we love to help everybody out. We do this podcast for free. There's some people out there that charge for this type of thing. We found a different model. We get sponsors, we get ads.
Yeah.
There's small ads that will show up on our podcast. But that's part of doing business.
Oh, totally. Yeah, we've all got to make money, haven't we? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. So you're saying that the link, like right now, I've got your primary link to your website, RhubarbandCustard.com, which I'm going to include on this broadcast. But are you saying that the online link to your online capabilities that's going to change a little bit going forward?
Yeah, well, it's a page within that website. So if you go to, I think you've already been to it, but if you go to the lessons and courses, and then online photography lessons, and I think that'll be the main landing page. What I'll probably do is create a new landing page going forward, possibly even a new page for the US audience. with dollars rather than pounds, and hopefully with the US time zones. At the moment, the booking system that we've got there cannot be changed in terms of time zones. So those are UK times.
Oh, okay. So somebody would have to adjust like the way I earned it. Like I interview a lot of people from Europe, a lot of bands from like Berlin and London, and I've also even gone to New Zealand and Australia and Tokyo. So I've had to adjust the time zone.
Yeah. Well, I've got a link on there for timeanddate.com, which is a calculator that allows you to sort of say, okay, well, if it's 5 o'clock in the UK, what time is it for me? So hopefully that'll help in terms of that conversion.
Oh yeah, that's a cool idea to do that, because a lot of times people, if they don't do that, people are like, well, I got to figure out what GMT is. I got to figure out where you are. They're like confused.
That's it. Exactly. Yeah.
That's great. So I'll use that link in this podcast.
Yep. Perfect.
And like what we can do is, I don't know if you have seen us on Instagram, but there's integration between Instagram and Spotify, and Spotify actually owns Anchor. Anchor
right,
is part of Spotify. So what happens is we're able to actually create highlights that go to the Spotify podcast version of this episode.
Fantastic.
Well, so we will create a highlight on our site, and you can do the same thing if you have an Instagram.
Yeah, definitely.
Once we publish, we'll be able to get that out there, and then people can just click the highlight, and it'll go right to the Spotify version of the podcast.
Oh, brilliant. Excellent.
Which is really cool. So we're very happy to have you on. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about in terms of your whole program for everybody?
I think that the other thing that is really interesting and something to be mindful of is the whole mindfulness state of it, and the benefits that you get from the psychology of photography, because as we've alluded to before, the whole aspect of being self-secluded, not being able to go out and interact with people as much, people who are self-isolating, who have the virus, they're going to find it. A lot of people who are already vulnerable and people who are absolutely not vulnerable at the moment are going to find that life gets, they have their very, very ups, but also their very downs. And I think that one of the huge benefits that photography does do is that therapeutic effect of starting to get people to actually slow down in terms of their thoughts, and to be a lot more self-aware of the way they view the world, of the way they view the details in everything. It's sort of a little bit like a form of meditation. So it really allows you to calm the anxiety levels down. It allows you to focus on the external, as opposed to just being introverted and focusing on your own problems at the time, which in effect lowers your blood pressure, it lowers your anxiety, and lifts you potentially. I really think it has the potential to lift people, even temporarily, but hopefully on a longer term, out of any kind of a depressive state or any kind of a bad mood, even just to lift the spirits a little bit. So I think that's a really important thing to mention, and to think about when discussing about whether or not to do an online photography course and that kind of thing.
Well, I think it can keep people engaged, in this situation. The same way I talk to the musicians, it's the same kind of idea. All the arts are uplifting, whether you're doing dance or music or photography or painting. The arts are important. They actually had to include the arts in our stimulus package, because the Democrats in America said, you can't leave that out. Because that's going to help a lot of people if they're like what you're saying, if you're stuck at home, you start getting into a depressive mood. The arts are what's going to get you through it.
Totally.
Between watching film or interacting on the net with artists and watching dancers and find a way to still perform. It's, all these things are very important to life. And I think it's going to help make people get through this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I totally agree.
I couldn't agree more.
So thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for being on the program.
That's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, again, we had Rhubarb and Custard, RhubarbandCustard.com. They're out of London right now. All their stuff's on, London time. but either you're making changes to make that adaptable, you have a tool set on there. I would encourage all the fans of Phantom Electric Ghost to check this out. If you're a band, you ought to look into this. We're going to look into it. And anybody else out there on our listening audience, that's home, stuck at home, you ought to check out. This will give you something really productive to do with your time. So thank you very much for being
well,
on.
Thank you so much, and a quick shout out to all of your listeners as well. I just wanted to say I hope everyone stays safe, stays at home, keeps out of the way, and just keeps healthy.
Well, thank you very much for that. That's also needed. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon. We tend to have our guest on again, so if you ever come up with other concepts in a couple of months and you want to talk to us again,
it'll be an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.